Commanding officer's opening remarks, Captain Jaramillo. I'd like to welcome him to the stage.
Can you all hear me?
Yeah.
All right, so certainly I'm just going to take about 10 minutes of your time this morning. Safety stand-downs are very important as we think about our priorities, and it always starts with safety, quality, throughput, and cost. Those are the four tenets that we live by, and then you all know I'm a true believer that training and processes take care of those four. So thank you today for coming out. Certainly we're going to just take a pause here and talk about safety. There's several topics. But I'm proud to say that with the SMS that we've been working for several years and going through the wickets, we've reached gold standard. So congratulations to all of you. Give yourself a round of applause for that. So that gold standard puts us at the top. So now it's just sustaining and maintaining. Similar to what we're doing with the Naval Sustainment System. We've started here in October, and we continue to progress as we go through all the aircraft lines and any other components that we need to still bring into the PCCs. So that will continue. We've done a great job. There's a NSS reform video. It's on YouTube if you haven't seen it. FRC put it out with Admiral Zarkowski leading on it. And I will tell you, yours truly made the cut, so I'm in there a couple times if you want to see me. So I also wanted to talk to you about, when I talk about NSS, is the 5S. So we've had several people come through in the past year, and we just had some folks come through to look at our effectiveness and completeness of our parts. And the accolades continue on how well our spaces look. And that goes a long way for us to do our jobs and the quality of work we do. And then also, it ensures that we have a good working environment for all of you. So I continue to press with safety and the safety boards that we have out front. Use those, and I'm always open for feedback on those, on how you can put those through the application areas. But I encourage you to use those for not just safety items, but other items. We'll take those in and we'll look at them to see what we can fix. I know a lot of you know, and I'm just going to bring this up because I think it's important for all of you. A lot of you know this is the year of the dollar, if you will. So when I got here back in 2016, we were looking at the aircraft lines. And we were saying, hey, how do we ensure that we do what we say? And so we looked at ranges of aircraft and aircraft that we want to put out. We've got that under control. We're pretty consistent on the number of aircraft that we say we're going to do every year, and we do it. Then we moved into components. And then NSS came in and helped us with that. So we've been killing it across the board. We've seen a reduction in IPG-1s across the fleet, not just E&Fs, but across the board. So now we're into, hey, our finances. And that's no one's fault. That's certainly just a matter of the things that's happened over the years to put us where we're at. So we're buckling down in those areas. So if you hear there's some financial constraints, what we're trying to do is set up an AOR, which is our recruitment of our dollars, over the next few years. So we get it right-sized and that we don't have a big fluctuation of rates and swings. And so that's kind of what we're looking at now. So we've tightened the belts a little bit on that, and we're going to continue to work with the other FRCs and FRC on our budget, and I believe we can get that under control too. So those are kind of the topics that I wanted to just tee up before we get into the topics on safety. But you got some sporting events coming up, some good guest speakers, certainly talking about ORM and IH and fall protection, all the things that keep us safe out there. So this is a big crowd, but I got time for a couple questions if you have questions for me. Okay, if not, then certainly I thank you in advance for your attention. This is a big deal, as obviously we take all these people out of what they're doing daily and bring them in here. So please pay attention to the speakers, take it in stride. I wish you all a very happy Thanksgiving as we're rolling into the holiday period. And then certainly, if you have the time and you're taking leave with your families and traveling, be safe out there on the road. All right, thank you very much.
Thanks, Theo. All right. So our first, or I guess our second speaker is going to be Lieutenant Commander Ryan McNulty. He's down at I believe it's the test flight, right? Yeah, I don't want to give him the wrong title. But so yeah, he's got some interesting stuff. He's going to be presenting our Operational Risk Management, or ORM. He's got some cool stuff for you to look at. Certainly, I had a good time looking at it myself. It was pretty cool. So you might want to keep your eye on this one.
Hey, good morning, everybody.
Morning.
In case a lot of you don't know me, I'm Lieutenant Commander Ryan McNulty, one of the F-18 pilots here that takes the jets up after you guys put them back together and test them out and eventually delivers them. What I'm going to tell you today is about a near miss on a flight event that I had in one of the Super Hornets that we put back together here. And I want to tell it to you guys because I know a lot of you in the crowd don't see the flight reports after we fly. You hear me now? Is that better?
Yeah.
There we go. So I'm going to talk to you today about a near-miss flight event for one of the Super Hornets that we put back together here. And I wanted to share it with you all because I know a lot of you in the crowd don't get the flight reports that we put out after we fly them, kind of see what happens and how they progress. And just to highlight that everybody in this crowd, whether you deal with financials, paperwork, actually turning wrenches on the jets, everybody has a role to play in order to get these jets put back together in a timely, safe fashion, and then we get them back to the fleet so they can go do good work around the world. So just a little background. Like I said, I was flying an F-18 Super Hornet, single seat, similar to the one that's pictured below. It's in the sequence, it was RT-33. Some of you might remember that, and I was using the call sign Crown 33, which you'll see in the playback that I have here. It was a second flight on the aircraft. It was Pro A complete, and we were just going back out to verify some fixes that we did after that first flight. Weather of the day wasn't great, but it was good enough to fly for a second flight confidence hop. It was a 700 scattered layer and then a 900-foot broken cloud layer, which was the big one that we had to deal with, or I had to deal with for coming back to land at the field safely. So that weather required an instrument approach back to the airfield. And the instrument approach I was going to use was called a PAR, which I'll get to shortly and kind of explain. And then the airfield configuration here at North Island was a single runway operation. So whether you know or not, there's 2 runways here at North Island, and one of them was closed. So it's going to kind of play into my flight planning and the ORM piece that I'll touch on after I show you what happened in this flight. All right, so what is a PAR? PAR is Precision Approach Radar. And basically, there's a radar beam that sits at the end of the runway, points upward along the flight path of an airplane, and there's a controller, and he is talking to me on the radio and tells me he has 2 different scopes. He has one scope that shows an up-down, so where I am on the glide path, whether I'm too high or too low. Then he has another one that shows me whether I'm too far left or right of center line of the runway. And he talks to me the whole time while I'm flying towards the runway, telling me I'm left or right, up, down, and then I have to correct in the cockpit. So it's a very precise instrument approach, and we can fly down to 200 feet. So if I can fly this down to 200 feet, the cloud layer is at 900 feet, so we can go flying for the day. And as you can see on the bottom of the, you can see down here, what I have is just kind of a picture. If you don't know what a glide path is, it's basically the trajectory of the airplane down to the runway. And like I said, the controller tells me whether I'm too high or too low on that glide path. So this is kind of a representation of the radar scope that the approach controller has. On the top here is the glide path, so kind of a stadium view looking from the side. And my track will fly down the glide path, and he'll tell me whether I'm high or low. And at the same time, the bottom here you have the kind of a top-down view, which shows whether I'm left or right of center line. And what he sees is basically my track marching down all the way to the runway there. So, like I said, I was flying the Super Hornet, doing a confidence check. We're located over here, with a nice Google Map representation of North Island. And I was flying basically in between San Clemente and North Island, so kind of in this area, about 50 miles off the coast. And just put it in perspective, we had single runway ops here in North Island, so just to show the orientation of the runway to kind of gauge everybody what I was looking at. And so I was landing runway 36, so I was coming from the south, landing to the north, and you'll see that Point Loma is right over here, to the left of the flight path, which will kind of be a factor. So here is a representation of what the radar controller, not the approach controller, but the radar controller can see. It's a a little hard to see. Maybe we can turn the lights down here. So I just want to give you a quick familiarization of this because I'm going to play the actual radar tape with the audio back so you guys know kind of what you're looking at before I play it. So over here in green is my airplane. You can see it says Crown 3.3. It's hard to see, but below it is the altitude and my airspeed. So this is 3.9, which represents 3,900 feet, and this is 225, which represents 250 knots. And that'll change as I come into the airport. So what you're looking at here is just different airspaces. Right here with the crossed runways, that is North Island. Just to the north, a single runway, that's going to be San Diego International. Then we have Imperial Beach and Brown Field over here. This center line, this dashed line right here represents the center line of runway 36, and each tick, the top of the tick is 1 nautical mile. So I don't know if you guys can see this, but there's a little T here, upside down T, that's going to represent 5 miles. So that's center line. Ideally, when I'm doing the approach, that's what I want to be on. But you'll see as the events unfold that I'm not actually on center line, which creates some issues. So just a quick overlay to kind of gauge everybody where this falls kind of on the map. Here is a overlay of Google Maps of North Island. And I try to fade it a little bit here so you can kind of see where everything falls out and where I'm going to be flying. Again, Point Loma is to the left of center line of the runway there, which plays into a factor. All right, so I'm just going to go through the slides here quickly. So kind of setting the stage, I took screenshots of the radar tape leading up to the event so I can quickly get through it, and then I'll go to the radar tape. So here I am, coming back from the checks, from the working area. I'm about 10 miles to south of the field there, and I knew that there was going to be weather. I knew it was a single runway operation, so if anything happened on that runway, I wouldn't be able to land. So I bumped up my fuel numbers in my pre-flight planning so that I could come back and have multiple attempts to land at the airfield if necessary. And here I am. This is my first approach. So I talk to the approach controller. I come into the runway on center line. I shoot my approach, and I get down to about 1 to 2 miles, which is about maybe 300 to 600 feet. And at the very last minute, they tell me that I can't land and that I have to go back around because of a foul runway. Something came out on the runway, and it wasn't safe for me to land. No problem. I get radar vectors back out to try it again. And again, ORMing, pre-flight planning, I knew that this could be a factor, so I had plenty of fuel to do this again. Come back around a second time, and something happens on the radar vectors with the approach controller, and I don't get lined up on center line quick enough or within enough distance of the airfield, and they say that I can't safely execute the approach at that point. They have to spin me back around to shoot another approach. So that's my second attempt. More fuel burn, more time airborne, which now I'm starting to look at my fuel, starting to sweat it a bit, getting a little nervous, because I planned for multiple approaches, but that only gets you so far. So here I am, third pass, third approach, and like I said, sweating the fuel, getting nervous, and I know in the back of my mind, as I'm continually watching my fuel numbers, that this is going to be my last attempt to land at North Island. If I don't break out or if something happens, then I'll have to declare an emergency because of min fuel and head to Miramar. So this is the third attempt, and I'll switch over to the actual radar tape. So here's the actual radar tape playback, and what you're going to hear are the comms. And you're going to hear the approach controller telling me whether I'm left of center line, left or right of center line. He's going to tell me whether I'm on glide path, above glide path, slightly above glide path, and it's just going to be calm back and forth. I'll try to explain it as best as I can and stop it if it's hard to hear. All right, so I'll hit play and I'll hold this up to the speaker so you can hopefully hear it.
Well, sports and course from on a 360 ready.
Hey, for 360 now.
Sports from right hitting 010.
010, 3 online. So as you can hear, that's the approach controller and me responding back to him. And he was saying, he was giving me a heading call there. Ideally, like I said, this is runway 360, so I would be heading on 360 once I get on center line. He's going to give me heading cuts, and you'll see that these heading cuts get bigger and bigger. Eventually, he'll say 030, which you can imagine on a clock. That's about 30 degrees to the right, which is a pretty aggressive heading change.
Well, of course, and correcting from on glide path to descent. On glide path 6 miles per descent. On glide path. Glide path. Well, of course, in holding from right heading 015. 015. Well, of course, and correcting slightly above glide path. Well, of course, and correcting slowly. Slightly above glide path coming down slowly. 5 miles per descent. Slightly above glide path coming down slowly. Advise when you have a field in sight. Well, of course, and correcting flight heading 020.
All right, so as you can see from my radar track in the center line, I'm drifting left of center line, and he keeps giving me heading changes to the right. So remember 360, and the last call he said was 020. So that's a 20-degree heading change to the right, which for this type of approach is a pretty aggressive heading change. So that just illustrates how far left of center line I'm drifting.
Well, of course, and correcting. Slightly above glide path. Well, of course, and correcting. Your power speed, correcting your gyro speed and off-road, this would be a no gyro turn right.
All right, so what he says there, for this type of approach, there's also an emergency procedure. We can shoot these approaches if our instruments in our airplane are not functioning correctly. And basically, the controller at that point, he can just tell us to start turn, and I know that I need to do a 30-degree angle bank heading change, and then he'll tell me stop turn, and then I roll out and roll wings level. He could see that something's not going correct on his scope because I'm drifting so far left. So he tried to implement that emergency procedure and get me to turn right. So just kind of, I know sitting in the audience here, we're in a comfortable setting. It's easy to see, oh yeah, I'm drifting left of center line there. But in the cockpit, I can tell you, the tensions were up because I was low on fuel this in my last pass. I'm sitting still in a cloud, I can't see anything, and I'm shooting my last approach. So, and radios aren't always great. So what I heard at the time was that he was trying to do this emergency procedure for training. I thought he said a no gyro for training. And I know it's easy to discern what he's saying now after the fact, but at the time, in the heat of the moment, that's what I heard. So I'm going to come back and tell him that I don't want to do that type of approach. I want to continue with a normal approach. In hindsight, obviously, I should have listened to him.
And prefer to do regular air approach, please.
Roger, flight heading 030 now. You're going well up course.
030.
Above glide path, 3 miles per descent. Flight heading 040 now.
040.
So he just said 040, so that's a 40-degree heading change to get me back on center line. So something's obviously not going right. You can see there's a LA, it's kind of hard to see on the projector there, but there's a low altitude warning that popped up on his screen there.
Cloud 33, low altitude alert, check your altitude newly.
Around 800 feet.
Cloud 33, the highest obstruction area in your vicinity is 544 feet. Crown 33, turn right heading 142, turn first time maintain 2000.
142, 2000, Crown 33.
Crown 33, expedite.
So after that call, I don't know if you could hear, but he said low altitude obstruction in your area is 544 feet, and right there I sit probably about 700 to 800 feet. So less than 200 feet difference between the low altitude warning that he gave me. And then he gives me an expedite call and tells me to climb to 2,000 feet. So you can imagine that in the cockpit, I was thinking that I'm imminently about to run into some terrain. I'm still sitting in a cloud, I can't see anything. So it was a pretty nerve-wracking moment.
Crown 33. 33 is in fuel. I'd like to go to my alternative from here.
Ground 33, say again.
And current 33, I'd like to meet fuel, like to head of my alternative from here.
Ground 335, maintain 2000, fly heading 142, stand by the frequency for some help.
So right there, I knew that I didn't have fuel to do another approach. My comms weren't all that great because I just thought that I was about to run into a mountain, specifically Point Loma. And at that point, they give me vectors to the south. I declare an emergency, and I head to Miramar, which is, there's no clouds there. And I land uneventfully, get gas, and eventually come back to North Island with no issue. So what happened here? Here's a satellite imagery from Google Maps of the airfield. You'll see runway 36 that I was landing on. There's the extended center line. And 2 miles is somewhere around here. And this is kind of the vicinity that I should have been on. But I was to the left significantly, so you can see I was quickly approaching Point Loma, which is the landmass that he called out at 544 feet when I was about 700 to 800 feet. So had it not been for the quick work of the air traffic controller to recognize that there was an issue and get me climbing, then I probably would have hit Point Loma had I continued on that trajectory. So I come back, I land, I tell our front office, I tell our aviation safety officer, and we kind of start looking into what exactly happened. I eventually go over and I visit the air traffic controllers, I listen to their radar playback, and then I get the things in work in order to get that playback file so I can share it with you guys. It takes some time, but over those days, the jet is determined to be good, and another aircrew flies it to China Lake. They deliver it, but during their delivery, they notice that the heading starts drifting during their flight, which I didn't notice on mine. And they deliver it to China Lake, they drop it off, they tell maintenance, hey, yeah, we noticed a weird heading drift, our magnetic variation wasn't holding. And eventually, VX9 comes back to us and lets us know that they found a faulty magnetic variation detector. And what that does is, all over the world, there's different magnetic variations that you have to account for on like a wet compass in order to get pointed true north. So you can see over here, there's 10 degrees. South America, there's up to 20. So we have to account for that variation in the magnetic field in order to get true north. And this magnetic variation detector in the aircraft automatically updates that magnetic variation to my instruments so that wherever I am in the world, I don't really have to update it. It does it automatically. But if that's faulty, then it's going to give bad information to my instruments and give me false heading indications. So this is what's suspected to be the culprit of what was causing me to have those incorrect headings during my precise approach, where I need to have my headings be very precise. So that's kind of my tale of woe about what happened on that flight event. I definitely went home that night, had a beer, and hugged my kids extra hard. So it was definitely kind of a hair-raising moment to think that I was about to slam into Point Loma. So kind of tying this into the ORM piece, with quick rehack of ORM because it is a safety stand-down. So what is ORM? It's a system that reduces or offsets risk by systematically. You identify the hazards, you assess and control the associated risks, and then allow decisions to be made that kind of weigh those risks versus the benefit. So it's a 5-step cyclic process that needs to be continually done. So you identify those hazards first, then you assess the hazards based on their severity, the probability, and the risk associated with it. And then you make a decision. You implement that decision into those controls that you found, and then you let the event play out, and then you supervise the event. So how do I do this on my normal flights every day here at FRC Southwest? Well, tied into the flight event that I just talked to you about. So pre-flight planning to identify the hazard. So, like I mentioned, there's single runway operations, and there's weather that could lead to a delayed recovery. So I assess the hazard. So what could happen with this delayed recovery? Well, it could lead me to running out of fuel before landing. So what do I put in place to reduce that risk? Well, I decide that I can still go flying as long as I increase my fuel state, my RTB fuel state, which we call bingo fuel, which I did in this case, thankfully. And then I implement those controls. So once I'm flying, I hit that increased bingo number, and then I start my RTB so that I have high fuel reserves when I come back to the field. And then I supervised the event. So each approach that I shot there, I did 3 of them total. Each approach, I was reevaluating my fuel state to determine, can I shoot another approach, or how many more can I do before I need to declare an emergency and head to my alternate field to get more fuel. And then I will go back all the way to step 1 again and identify the hazard. So each approach, I say, what happens if I don't land on this next landing? And again, a cyclic process, continually updating and assessing the risks. And I think this, I'm sure we all do this every day in our lives, but just to rehack, you can do this on the job here, you can do it at home over Thanksgiving or Christmas leave, and it'll help you to reduce any hazards during those events. Does anybody have any questions? All right, thanks for your time.
Thank you, Lieutenant Commander. How's everybody doing? You guys doing all right? Yep. I had to speak out. I need some more bass in my voice. I know you couldn't hear me. All right, let's see where we're at now.
Good afternoon. Is that too loud? Can everyone hear me? Yes. Good afternoon, and welcome to the Safety Stand Down. It is an honor and privilege to be here with you. Since I've been here, I've learned a lot from you. And I want to tell you a little something about what I've learned about toxic substances and heavy metals. This you already know. Safety starts with you. That means you wearing your PPE, your personal protective equipment. What I would like to show you is just a small portion of what is done here, of your work. Not your actual work, because we could not put up pictures or give photographs or make videos of you working, but an example. A lot of you are painters. You work in paint. You paint equipment. You grind, use grinders, sanders, and you are exposed to different types of toxic materials. This is an example of a paint booth. Why you should not lift your visor. It's this title. As you can see by the second picture, it talks about PPE, what you should wear. Because of the atmosphere that is changing, the oxygen level goes down, you will have air. Grade D air. Some of you have been in my respirator class. If not, if you wear a respirator, well, I will see you. The air is tested every 3 months for your safety. We put you first. For the picture you see here of the person that is spraying, water was used just to show what happens during a spray painting operation. The second picture you see, if you look to your left, you will see a graph which has the exposure of the air. Why would someone raise their visor? I know we don't do this here, not in our facility. Your safety is first. You wear your PPE, wear your respirator, you wear your Tyvek, you're covered. As you can see on the graph, the high exposure of this person and what they're breathing in. As you can see, it continues to go up. He's breathing it in. It's in his visor. Then he put the visor back on. The air inside the visor is still high of the substance. You see, it takes a while for it to go down. As you can see by the graph, how it goes back down to normal. Do not lift your visor. These are just a few of the toxic substances you work with. We do our best to keep you safe. Help us keep you safe. Wear your PPE. Some of these substances are carcinogenics, meaning they cause cancer. Don't take it home. Wear your PPE. Do I have any questions? Thank you.
But again, the preventable injury and death motivates me to do these talks. I've been speaking for 35 years now, and I didn't even realize it'd been that long until somebody asked me a few years ago, how long have you been speaking? And I thought, well, gee, I don't know. I started in '84 when I started traffic reporting, and then they calculated, you've been speaking for over 30 years? And I said, really? You know, it felt like 10, 15. Time flies. But again, what I was learning, that's what motivates me, and especially what motivates me is the screaming and the crying that you hear at the crash scene, or at the hospital, or at the funeral home, and I've experienced all of those. So my forewarning, I do show some graphic pictures and videos, so I'll forewarn you when it's something that may shake your tree a little bit, but that way you can shut your eyes or look this way as we show you the videos and the photographs. So, but I feel I need to show you what's real, it's reality. I can't just sugarcoat it and say, well, you should buckle up, you could get hurt. No, I'm going to show you what happens when you don't, and other things that we do. We shouldn't be doing behind the wheel. Driving is serious business, but if you don't take it seriously, that's when things happen. And it doesn't mean you have to drive with a furrowed brow. Now, looking at our 911 calls, what do we respond to? When I was a traffic reporter, my world was traffic. When I transitioned to work for a fire department, I thought, oh, I'm going to go to a lot of fires. I quickly found out our number one 911 call was a traffic collision, not a fire. In fact, less than 10% of our calls are fires, followed by heart attacks, strokes, falls, and all the miscellaneous. And I really like to point out one of the factors under the miscellaneous that we see a lot, especially around the holidays, especially with Thanksgiving coming up, is choking on food. Now, the number one thing we choke on here in San Diego County is, and when it comes to food, is carne asada. So, at one time, both my daughter and son-in-law were paramedics, and my daughter's now a physician's assistant. But my son-in-law went to a call at a restaurant, and it was reported somebody choking. They come in, okay, where's the person? And they say, oh, he's right here. And they're pointing at this poor guy turning blue on the ground. Nobody was doing anything. So he tipped his head back, looked down his throat, could just see the tip of meat, and pulled him out with forceps, and did a few pumps on the chest, and the guy started breathing again. So saved his life, got there just in time. Now when we look at traffic collisions, basically we have about 6 million collisions a year across the United States. A lot of people, a lot of cars, and a lot of bad drivers. Now when we look at 2018 statistic, about 40,000 people died during that year, 4.5 million injured. So it keeps our emergency crews very busy. And basically when we drive badly, it's job security. But they don't want the business, but they know they're going to get it. Especially on a rainy day. On average, we have 60 to 70 collisions a day. The last few days, I'm sure the statistics will be about 500 to 600 crashes each day that it rained. Now, the number one thing we need to realize is the vehicles we drive are not built for crashing. Our vehicles are built for transportation only. So when we race around those roadways, crash, your car is going to fall apart, depending on what kind of car you have. Maybe it'll stand up a bit, but it's that jolt of the impact that's going to impact you and the people that maybe you hit, if you just didn't hit a tree or a wall. But again, our vehicles are not made for crashing. The only vehicles made for crashing are NASCARs, and people die in those crashes too, and tanks. And if you've lived in San Diego long, you know that we had a tank that got onto our roadways, stolen from the armory up in Kearny Mesa. And it didn't end well for that person, but again, that's the only tank we've had. If you don't know what I'm talking about, when you get back to your office, Google tank rampage in San Diego. Now, the crushing impact, again, that jolt of the crash is what kills a lot of us, the internal trauma that happens in that jolt. But rollover crashes are among the worst type of crashes, and when you're rolling, if you're not seatbelted, you're tossed ahead of the roll. So quite often your own vehicle rolls over you. And if you drive a sport utility vehicle, they're notorious for rolling over. Any vehicle can roll, but especially a sport utility vehicle. Now, aside from motorcycles, the most dangerous form of transportation, SUVs, your chances of dying are greater in an SUV than any other vehicle, aside from the motorcycle. So I took some of the top collision factors of the crashes you're responding to. Cell phones being number one, distracted driving, it's our number one problem. DUI, alcohol, now marijuana, more prevalent, and other drugs. And in fact, I've met at least 2 people who got DUIs for drinking too much NyQuil. Maybe they took an 8-hour dose, but only got 5 hours of sleep and then headed off to work the next day, and they're driving under the influence, weaving down the roadway, just like anybody else that's under the influence. Red light running is a huge issue, a big problem, especially since they turned off the cameras in San Diego, and then they also did it in El Cajon. And, but drowsy driving, when you're tired, you've been working all day, and then you go meet the friends after work, you're pretty tired. And especially if you're driving long trips, factor in sleep time. Not while you're driving, ahead of the time. And again, you're just as dangerous as a DUI driver when you're sleepy behind the wheel. We have what's called where you look at something and you're going toward it, you look at it, and you drive toward it. So, let's get English here. You drive toward the object you're looking at. So it's like a moth to a light bulb when you're sleepy and when you're under the influence. That's why you see them hitting trees, people changing tires, and things like that. We still have a huge problem with road rage. You'll see it in the news, somebody just going ballistic, and I'll cover that topic too. Head-on collisions are up dramatically. Majority of those are DUI. Sometimes there's somebody who just got lost or an elderly, but more often it's somebody under the influence. Pedestrian deaths, we got great weather most of the time like today. So a lot of people are walking and jogging, and they're going against the lights, crossing, mid-block crossing between cars. The things you learn as a child not to do, adults are doing it and getting themselves killed as a result. But we're basically ignoring laws made for our safety. When we see a problem, make a law trying to prevent deaths, and then people ignore it, especially the speed limit. The speed limit isn't 35-ish, 70-ish, 65-ish. No, you're supposed to be driving that speed limit, and if it's raining, you'd be below that speed limit. So again, people ignore that law dramatically. But the biggest factor behind the wheel is attitude. And this has a lot to do with road rage as well. But just your attitude on driving. If you're leaving the house thinking, oh, I gotta go on those roadways and I'm gonna run into all these terrible drivers, then you're starting off with a bad attitude. To start off with, wow, what a beautiful day, what a great day to drive, and I've left plenty of time to get to work, give yourself extra time, and then you're more relaxed and less apt to get angry behind the wheel. And again, we'll talk about road rage later on. The National Highway Traffic Safety Administration, the people I work with a lot, distracted driving is our #1 problem. And again, they're estimating about 9 deaths a day as a result of people doing other things behind the wheel, especially with their cell phones. And it's a deadly epidemic and injury. When you're in a collision, if you've never been in one, it's over in an instant. Boom, crash is over with. But in that impact, in that moment, blink of an eye, you've had 4 impacts. The first, your vehicle made contact with an object. Second, your vehicle makes contact with you. And third is the biggest killer. It's the jolt your body goes through, depending on how fast you're going, what's going to rip and tear internally. And being hit by debris in your car, if you've got a car with a trunk, put all your heavy stuff in the trunk. Don't let it be floating around the back seat and such. And also with the SUVs, get that netting or the extra cover they have to keep the stuff that you have in the back of your car there. Otherwise, it becomes projectiles in a collision, and it's flying all around your car. We had a woman that was in a crash who couldn't figure out what killed her. I thought, well, gosh, she had her seatbelt on and something. So when the coroner took possession of the body, then they do their autopsy, they like to open up the brain. So they opened up her brain, took it out, and they found this contusion, a bruising straight across the back of her head. And they said that's what killed her. Something hit her in the back of the head. So we go back to the car looking for what could have done it that had a straight line. And what we found was her laptop. It was laying in the back seat, and evidently it flew up, hit her square in the back of the head, and if it hits you hard enough, the back of your brain regulates your breathing and your heartbeat. Essential for living. And that's what took her out, was her laptop. So put that stuff in a trunk, in bags and things like that. Just don't let it float around your car. So to give you a good gauge for those who do like to speed, to see the danger you're putting yourself in, for every 10 miles per hour you put on that speedometer, it's like going up an elevator. So at 10 miles per hour, if you crash, that's equivalent to about a 1-story fall off a building. 30 miles an hour, 3 stories high, 3-story fall. So again, the higher the speed and the higher you're going in that building and the impact in that crash. At 30 to 35 miles an hour, it's enough of a hit to break and tear things inside your body. And at 50, that's when we start seeing a lot more fatals occur in crashes. So to give you a good example of what was happening in the last couple of days of the rain, With the rain, the roadways are super slippery because they haven't been cleaned for a long time. It's been dry weather, hot weather, and that oil buildup is super bad. So as it rains, it becomes almost like driving on ice. And this is why I like to show this video. The gentleman in this video, I have my pointer here, but he's in the right-hand lane, being safe, taking it nice and slow on a very slippery, icy roadway. As he moves along, he got bored being safe. He was 34, and you'll see him change lanes to the left to go a little faster. The car in front of him gets out of the way, nice courteous driver. And then he just starts to speed up, and then everything changes. So now he's changing from the right to the left. You're going to see the blinker of the car in front of him go on to get out of his way. There it is. He just starts to speed up, loses control, bounces with that truck, and then goes across into the path of a semi. Again, he was 34. So again, he was being safe. But then what changed? His attitude changed. He thought, I can go a little faster. And everything changed, and now he's gone. How you wear your seatbelt, very important. First of all, wear the seatbelt. And there's a term, buckle up if you like your face, because it goes straight through the windshield, into the dashboard, into the steering wheel. But seatbelts are super important. We have a 3-point system for adults. Top comes across your chest, and usually when you buckle up both at the same time, but there's some cars that you have to do the lap belt separately. Well, don't worry about what the cops can't see, because we had a woman at 40 miles an hour that didn't do her lap belt, just did the upper belt. And she crashed at 40 miles an hour going across an intersection, and she slid down because her hips weren't held back, because that strap holds your hips back. She slid down at 40 miles an hour, slamming her thighs under the dashboard. This part of your bone, from your knee to your hip, is called a femur bone. It's a hard bone to break, but it breaks a lot in crashes. She broke both femurs, slamming against underneath the dashboard. And there's a term called compound fracture, which is when the bone comes through the skin. And we had 2 bones sticking out through her pant legs, looking back at us in a lap full of blood. And she unfortunately lost too much blood and passed away on the way to the hospital. But again, she didn't wear the lap belt. Wear that lap belt. Also prevents you being thrown out of the car if you suddenly roll. For babies, if you've got a newborn at home, they should be in a backwards facing seat for the first 2 years, because it's really hard, the whiplash on their necks. I like the full car seat as they get older. I think those booster seats are too wobbly, but till they can graduate to a full seat, wearing that strap across your chest. Airbags deploy at 180 to 200 miles an hour out of your dashboard. So, you should be at least 10 to 12 inches away from the airbag as the driver. It's about the size of a piece of paper, and then double it for the front seat passenger, about an arm's length. So that way when the airbag goes off, the combination of airbag cushioning you, seatbelt grabbing you back, keeping you from going through the windshield, should protect you quite a bit. And for heaven's sakes, keep your feet off the dashboard. Don't let kids do it, don't let anybody do it, because if those airbags go off, it'll push your feet back at 180 to 200 miles an hour. Quite often, if people are sitting straight forward like this, their knees will come back and they'll crush their face in. Other ways, their legs will just get mangled up. And quite often, when your face is crushed in, you're dead. But in other cases, you're disfigured. I've seen some people that survive, but badly disfigured. So don't do that. So for those who still don't want to buckle up, let me show you what happens when you don't. Again, like I said, most often when you roll, your vehicle is, and as it starts to roll, you're tossed ahead of the roll, so your own vehicle will roll over you. In this case, his vehicle would have done that. This person is being pursued by law enforcement. You're going to see an example of what happens when you start to roll, what happens to your body. And I'll forewarn you, you're going to see a body tossed out of the car, and bad things happen. So here we go. And hopefully this convinces you to buckle up, if you're somebody who doesn't. You can see how badly our cars just fall apart. He starts to roll, it's an SUV, hits the center divide, he hits the ground, and it's really hard to stop, go in the opposite direction. You're flying at 60, 70, 80 miles an hour, and his vehicle would have rolled over him had it not been stopped by the wall. And hopefully he passed away when he hit the ground. So, media, they got to show you twice. Had he been buckled up, been maybe a different story. But again, jumping back to our number one problem, distracted driving. What's distracting you behind the wheel? And it could be, again, as little as you turning your head to talk to your passenger. Well, people are eating behind the wheel, doing makeup, brushing their teeth, shaving, and doing all these things they should have done at home. but trying to do it behind the wheel. Even just changing the stereo. I remember a situation where a person was doing that and suddenly they drifted to the right and ran over a bicyclist in the bicycle lane and killed him. So again, be careful what you're doing behind the wheel. But it's crucial to your survival and those around you that you're 100% alert behind the wheel. It takes your mind less than 2 seconds to go, oh my gosh, I gotta hit the brakes, I gotta steer the wheel, I gotta do something to avoid being in this collision. But if you're distracted, you don't have that reaction time and you're full blown into a crash. So again, don't be distracted. To drive home this message, in the right-hand lane you can just start to see a semi. As he's driving along, he decides he wants a better ringtone for his cell phone. So he's fumbling with his cell phone as he's driving, looking at it, trying to find a better ringtone. He doesn't notice that traffic up ahead in the right-hand lane is stopped, and he hits the backup. So it's a nasty crash, I'll forewarn you. That's interesting, they had a rear cam on this car. Just hits him like he wasn't expecting them to be there at all because he wasn't looking. And that's what the young lady that hit me when she rear-ended me. Oh my gosh, I was looking at my cell phone, and I said, well, I was sitting at a red light. Oh no, it was green. I said, I was sitting at a red light. Why would I sit at a green light? You know, so obviously, last time she looked, it was red. So the same thing. He looked up, traffic was fine. When he looked down, things changed, and people were stopped. In that backup, he killed a woman and her 3 kids, and was sentenced to a measly 10 years. So the other big factor, too, is about 70 to 80% of our collisions happen at intersections. So watch out for red light runners, especially since they've been turning off the cameras everywhere. In 2017, the Auto Club came out that 890 people were killed at intersections, and that included, of course, a passenger that would usually be hit direct side impact, could be the driver, but they also included pedestrians. People are crossing the street thinking, oh, I've got the green to cross, start going, and then somebody's running the red light, and now they're taken out. Same thing with bicyclists, so they're all included in that factor. So to give you a good example of how often this happens, let me show you some video of various red light runners, and if someone was not buckled up in any of these collisions, there would be some very serious, if not fatal, injuries as a result of flying around that car, especially children. If somebody didn't buckle up their child, they're flying like rag dolls. And when people say, oh, the cars don't roll, you're going to see some rollover factors here. And you would think somebody would see them advancing. I don't think they're going to stop, or I think they're going to turn in front of me, do something. You know, don't just plow right into them. And the wider the intersection, wider the roadway, the faster traffic is moving. So harder impacts. There's usually music with this, but. And that flashing light is pictures taken. Again, I love the cameras because it takes pictures of the collision. It takes video of the collisions, and it shows exactly who was involved. So it's great for your lawsuits. And then you hit other things. You hit vehicles, but then you bounce off into trees and poles and walls. Low-flying bird. Roll over. And you have 2 cars stopped at the light. That one just left its right lane, so somebody just flew on through. It's like, what are they doing? Yeah. So they could be chit-chatting, they could be under the influence, they just aren't paying attention, daydreaming. This is similar to a pit maneuver that law enforcement try to do to stop people they're pursuing. It's a tap on the back to cause them to roll over. Now before you leave to make that left turn, look to make sure traffic is stopped. And if they caught, this is saving dozens of times looking, I don't think they're going to stop. Sure enough, whoop, fly through the red light. So you've got a nice clear intersection, now you've got a congested intersection. So again, big wide open space, you think somebody would figure something out here, but no. They don't look like they're going that fast, so you think somebody would slow down, anticipating somebody's going to cut you off. Now this person actually makes it, but kind of freaks out after they did. Oh my gosh, I went through a red light. Ah. So again, wide open spaces here as they're flying. Yeah, that's a hard hit. That's direct side. And they rolled. This is a really bad rear end collision. I wouldn't be surprised if it was fatal. And then coming in from the right will be a motorcyclist who had the green light. And careful getting up because you could be badly hurt. And this one is fast. 91 miles an hour. Yeah, he changed his pants when he got home. Woo! And there's a bicyclist too. Yeah, these are harder, faster hits on this. Just roll just that picture. Now this person may have been having a medical emergency. That happens a lot on our roadways. This person's bouncing off everything. Now this person gets hit. They may have somehow hit their head or something because they seem a little dazed coming back this way. And then if you're carrying something like that van is carrying a bunch of stuff in the back and ends up in the roadway, sometimes trunks pop open and everything you're carrying there. This person stops and then the person next to him, keeps on going. Is he going to roll? Now this is the wrong way pursuit of a motorcyclist. Two people on this motorbike, when they get hit. One guy lands on the other guy, he's okay and runs. And then the other guy's hurt because the guy just landed on him, so now he's hobbling away. Here's a motorcyclist getting rear-ended. Not a good thing. He landed in the back area of this car in the trunk of the truck. A good friend of mine was killed out of high school that way, hit rear-ended. Now this is something super unusual. This is a polite red light runner. Oh, excuse me, let me back up. Ooh, I wonder why he's driving so fast. Oh. Here's this guy's trunk popped open and everything in the roadway. Keep an eye on the far right-hand lane there. That is so rare that that would happen and that this guy didn't get hit, but it's amazing. So let's say after my talk, you're one of the best drivers in the world now. You get out onto the roadway and you're sitting at a red light thinking, okay, I'm good, I'm safe. And you're in one of these first three cars here. When across the way, that white truck decides, I'm gonna run the red light one time too many. Here we go. So again, it shows you how our bad driving can impact other drivers. And in this case, there were about 6, 7 cars, one caught fire. So again, it's amazing how this impacts other people when you choose to drive badly. And the day that, the second time San Diego turned off their red light cameras, 2 hours later, after they just turned off the cameras, a woman ran a red light and she hit this nanny who was pushing the child she was taking care of across the intersection with her green light. When this woman runs the red light, it hits them both. The nanny is killed. She had 2 teenage kids at home, so they lost their mom. And then this youngster ended up like this. So again, how much you impact others when you are doing things you shouldn't be doing, especially red light running. And again, 70 to 80% of the crashes occur. We see the people who, you see the people who make it, we see the people who don't make it. So just a reminder, red lights mean stop. Yellow light means prepare to stop, but you should be slowing down for intersections. And green light, it doesn't mean go anymore. Green light means hold it before you go. If you're at the front of the line, even a second, look. And I say look, not glance, but look, and then look again for that person who just floored it 2 blocks away, so that by then they're just making it to the intersection. And this has saved me countless times. And I've gotten feedback where it ended up saving other people too by just looking before they get into an intersection. Especially making a left-hand turn, I've had people honk at me, like, go, it's green, hello. And then I'm looking, and sure enough, sometimes a semi goes blowing through, and then they're like, oop, okay, go now. So. And the other thing is stop rolling through stop signs. It is a few seconds worth your life or a ticket. This is the #1 ticket given, but it's the #1 thing people are doing is rolling through stop signs. And I live at a 4-way stop, that was a mistake, but officers sit about a block up from my house to watch for the red light runner, or excuse me, stop sign runner, and they've got an easy ticket. It's the easiest ticket to avoid by doing one thing, stopping. But don't assume people are going to stop. You're at a 3-, 4-way stop, look, and then somebody's approaching, wait till they stop, okay. Especially if you're on a motorcycle, because we've had people run stop signs and hit motorcyclists, and they usually ended up fatal. This was one of my collisions that I told I was been involved with. It was a stop sign runner, ran it by 2 car lengths. And I was able to slam the brakes when I saw she ran this stop sign, and I protected from me hitting her side impact, and I hit her back door, but it seriously injured me. I was transported, got to experience that fun ride, to the hospital. They did let me go after about a day, checking me out. And they said, well, if you have any other things pop up. Well, I went back for a checkup a couple of months later, and I was saying, yeah, I get a little lightheaded. I figured that's from the whiplash, like mild concussion you get. And the doctor looked at my seat and goes, that happened like 2 months ago. That should be long gone. He says, are you feeling any tingling in your fingers and toes? I said, yeah, I guess so, a little bit. He goes, let's do an MRI on your neck. And they found that I had spine damage from the whiplash. So as a result, that I had a hyperextended wrist, my thumb caught the airbag, and that was painful. But what they ended up having to do is, with the spine damage, they had to do surgery on my spine because it was pressing on my spinal cord. And so when I'd bend over, it pressed more, and when it came up, it'd release. I had 2 surgeons that told me I should have been paralyzed, and they couldn't understand why I wasn't. Thank you, Lord. Okay, now what? So surgery. So I had a lovely scar on my neck for the longest time, and again, but at least I'm walking. I've had double knee surgery, so that put on the good old weight gain, but I can still lose weight. In fact, I'm losing now, but the surgery alone is $65,000 for that neck surgery. So again, make sure you've got good insurance, because if the other person didn't, she did have good insurance. But see, it was thinner back then. But again, be careful. Your aggressive drivers, speeding drivers, sleepy and DUI drivers, quite often don't have insurance, have limited insurance. You only need $15,000, and that's nothing. A hospital ride, and a couple of days in the hospital, if anything. But again, have uninsured, underinsured motorist coverage. Highly recommend at least $500,000, if not $1 million, if you can afford it. Sometimes just $30 more, and it's well worth it. If the other person has no insurance, then you're at least covered to cover the injuries, especially if you have family. So that comes from my lawyer, examining my case. But road rage, again, there are bad drivers out there. When somebody cuts you off, just let it go. Oh, I'm a good driver. I was able to avoid getting in a collision and continue your way. But when we retaliate, trying to get even, then bad things happen, and you've seen it. People get shot at. I mean, it's not worth it to retaliate against somebody. When somebody cuts me off, I just say, karma. And then I proceed to see the person cutting off, trying to cut off other drivers, and then people cutting off that driver. And I think, oh, karma, karma. And I see it all the time. So it's why get involved with chasing them down and getting even, do it to them? No, not worth it. And if you're caught doing that, you'll get a ticket that could be at least $1,000. And if you're doing other crazy things, it could be up to 6 months in jail. So our motorcyclists, real quick, dressed for the crash, zero protection. They've tried to make some improvements, but there's no protection on a motorcycle. Helmets, at least, but before the helmet law was passed in most states, like California, motorcyclists were our #1 organ donors. And then they passed the helmet law, and that dropped that donor population down dramatically. But they're still our #1 organ donors because there's no protection on a motorcycle. Now, we looked at those stats. A lot of them are involved in DUI crashes, their own, that they're DUI and tried to ride home. And a lot of them didn't have the experience, they didn't have the training. And some, at 1,900 of those, did not wear helmets of the 5,100 that were killed. So again, you need to have good experience. So the most dangerous behaviors are the lane splitting that they do. We've had a lot of people killed lane splitting, motorcyclists. Driving under the influence, I mentioned, not seen by the drivers, people looking for cars, not motorcycles. Again, no protection, and you lose control a lot. You'll see it.
I'm sure some of you do already. And I'm, again, from the safety office. I'm just going to get started right out the gate with this. So, what are the objectives we're going to cover? Pretty simple: the need for energy control procedures, methods of lockout, tagout, and employers, supervisors, and operators' responsibility. So again, everybody's involved in this. It's not just point the finger at your boss, right? So it's technically known as control of hazardous energy, but we just refer to it as lockout, tagout, or LOTO. And what it is the control of energizing, starting, or stored energy in a machinery or equipment which would cause injury to employees. Basically, this whole thing is, the reason why we lock out and tag out machinery is for what? To prevent injury, right? Just like everything else we do. I don't want anybody getting hurt, you don't want anybody getting hurt. And the scope for this is, we're going to cover the servicing and or maintenance of machines where the unexpected startup or release of stored energy could cause injury. Believe it or not, just because a machine's off, doesn't mean there's not any energy left in the machine. It's been known to happen. Those machines will just kick right up. So we're going to go through installation and setup, adjustment of, or maintenance, inspection, modification, or routine service. There are, of course, with anything, there's some exceptions to this. You're saying, well, I have to lock everything out, so if I have to change a drill bit out, I got to tag out my drill? Not necessarily. So stuff for like minor tool changes, adjustments, and other minor servicing activities which take place during normal production operations are not covered if they're routine, repetitive, or integral. So again, if this is something you do every day, it's part of the process, we're not going to have you lock out a machine and tag it out. A big example I use is machinists, right? They change out their end mills, like drill bits, but they're fancier. When they're doing that, we're not expecting them to lock out the machine completely just so they can change out a bit. It's totally different. That's when you fall into the exception category. Here's a nice matrix of it. Probably, I don't know if you can see it very well or not. Is it, can you see it? Is it clear coming through? Yeah, okay. It's pretty simple, right? This is like your ORM. This is your SOP kind of thing. Before you do anything, you're gonna, weigh your options. What am I gonna do? Is it safe for me to do it this way, or is it safe for me to do it a different way? And that's what's gonna dictate the action you take, right? Pretty everyday stuff. We do it subconsciously. We don't even think about it most of the time. Think about driving, right? So what does LOTO not cover? Exposure to electrical hazards from work on, near, or with conductors or equipment in electric utilization installations. It's not really us, right? That's more like an SDG&E thing. You see those guys out there doing that dangerous stuff. Normal production operations, like I said, normal everyday stuff. This is not going to affect you. Work on cord and plug equipment if it is unplugged. The plug remains within arm's reach during servicing, and authorized employee has exclusive control of the plug. So if I unplug something and I'm 2 feet away from it, and I got it right here, and I know nobody's gonna go for it, then you're not covered by this. But again, you never know. If guards are removed or bypassed and are effective in preventing workers' exposure to hazards created by the unexpected energization or startup of machines or equipment or the release of energy. Again, just because you turn the machine off doesn't mean there's any stored energy in there. Here's some definitions just to get you familiar, because again, this is familiarization training. For some of you, for others, it's a refresher. But here are some energy sources. We have electrical, right? Hydraulic, pneumatic, mechanical, chemical, which you won't see very much here. Thermal, we used to have, steam? That's kind of gone away, right? Pressurized liquids and kinetic energy. And then we have another definition here for isolating device. It's a mechanical device that physically prevents the transmission or release of energy. I would equate this to, everybody drives automatics now, but a transmission, right? You have a clutch. That's kind of like an isolating device. If you don't press that clutch down and put it into gear, it's not going to go anywhere. That energy's been isolated. Oh, look at that spinning thing. There we go. All right, yeah. First time it happened. I didn't do that, by the way. So LOTO, it applies to more than just electrical circuits. I'm sure you've seen electrical circuit locked out before, right? Those junction boxes or whatever, you see them? They have a little red tag on them. You might see a lock on them. That's where you normally would see them, but that's not the only place you'll see them. It's just a more common. And here's where we get down to it. It's authorized employees, which for us would be maintenance workers, so your maintenance guys. Affected employees, which would be your operators. Again, machinists would be your operators. And all other employees, which would be the rest of us, right? Those of us behind a desk that we're like, why am I here? I don't even know about this. Well, you do, because you might run into this one day. You never know. So for authorized employee, it'd be an employee who locks out or tags out machines or equipment to perform servicing or maintenance on that machine or equipment. Again, it's going to be maintenance for us. An employee who performs the duties of his or her job on equipment or in an area in which energy control procedures is implemented and servicing or maintenance operations are performed. That would be your operators. And then we have, again, everyone else. Other employees whose work operations are or may be in the area where the energy control procedure may be utilized. Here's our basic law requirements. There's a picture right there, like I was talking about earlier. What you would normally see is the electrical lockout. That's what you normally see. It's the most common. So a lot of it is used to ensure equipment to be worked on cannot be activated by locking out or tagging the equipment's power source. Again, I don't know if you'd ever want to work on a machine that has still power going through it, or you just hope your buddy behind you doesn't turn it back on while you're in there, right? You got to have some real trust to do that. Remember, trust but verify. I would still lock it out. For electrical powered equipment, its electrical breaker is to be open, lock, and tag. Steam turbine drivers, again, not something we normally see here, but they'll have their steam inlet and outlet valves blocked and locks and tags installed. The removal of a valve handle electrical fuse does not constitute a proper lockout. Make sense? So you probably broke it, to be honest with you. If you removed a valve or something like that, you're not trained to do it, you probably broke the machine. I wouldn't want to pull out electrical fuses myself. And we're going to continue with basic auto requirements. Lockout, tagout should be both be used. Never use a tag alone. Anybody think why you want to use a tag alone? How many signs do we have on base that say, don't do this, don't do that, warning, caution? And how many times do those get ignored? Probably quite a bit, right? Stop signs. We've all seen people run those. I've seen people run red lights here all the time. So again, don't just trust a sign or a light to get the job done. Test the equipment to ensure zero state. Again, it's like your SOP, your pre-op, right? You want to make sure what you're doing is safe, it's working properly as it should. Here we have a 6-hole hasp right here on the side. There's a reason why it has 6 holes. It's for locks. So if you have a lock, you're going to have your own lock. You're going to lock it out with your name on it, and then somebody behind you is going to come by and do the same thing. The reason behind that is you want one person, one lock, one key. You don't want somebody else access to your lock so they can just say, oh, well, I think he's at lunch. I think he's at lunch. And they go behind you and remove your lock and put power back to that machine. Then that's when stuff happens, right? So to prevent that, we're going to have multiple locks. And everybody has to remove their own lock before they can re-energize that machine. There we go. So the statement or intended use of procedure, steps for shutting down, isolating, blocking, and securing machines or equipment to control hazardous energy. Steps for placement, removal, and transfer of lockout devices or tagout devices, and the responsibility for them, and requirements for testing machine equipment to determine and verify effectiveness of lockout devices and other energy control measures. It's a whole lot of words, right? This is pretty much your SOP. This is telling you how we're going to do it, right? From start to finish. This is all this is telling you, in the shorter version of it. Again, then we have exceptions, right? Everybody looks for the way out, for the shortcut. Well, I don't want to deal with this. Well, what can I fall under to not have to follow it? Well, for this, you do have a category, but it's very specific. So machine equipment has no potential for stored residual energy after shutdown. Again, you got to make that call. Do you really trust that machine to be completely de-energized? Right? You'd have to test it to know for sure. Machine or equipment has a single energy source which can be readily identified and isolated. The isolation and locking out of energy source will completely de-energize, deactivate the machine or equipment. And the machine equipment is isolated from that energy source and locked out during servicing or maintenance. So pretty much there has to be a 0 chance of that thing getting any kind of energy or power for you to be accepted from documentation. But you better be sure. More documentation exceptions. Single lockout device will achieve a lockout condition. Lockout device is under the exclusive control of the authorized employee performing the servicing or maintenance. Servicing and maintenance does not create hazards for other employees, rarely if ever that ever happens. And the employer has no, this is a good one, employer has no accidents involving the unexpected activation, re-energization, or the machine equipment during servicing maintenance. That last statement pretty much says, or what it means to me, how I interpret it, is that you're so good, you've been doing this for so long that you've never had a mishap, nothing's ever gone wrong with that machine. How often does that happen? Almost never, right? It's all luck, to some degree. Eventually something will happen. Don't just say, and we've all have those guys in the shops, or everybody. I've been here 20, 30 years. I've never had anything happen. They just jinx themselves, because what happens that week after? Something happens, they get hurt, right? So you want to avoid that. And again, just because you've been doing it for X amount of years doesn't mean you're immune to it. Everybody has the same amount of chance of getting hurt. Energy control program, if an energy isolating device is not capable of being locked out, the employer's energy control program shall utilize a tag-out system. I haven't seen this myself. I'm sure it's out there. So if you can't physically lock out the machine, what's the best thing you can do? Put a sign on there, put a tag. Something that somebody can see, that's letting them know that there is a hazard here, or don't use this machine because of X reason. Here's another picture right here of the hasp I was telling you about. So this is materials and hardware. It's provided by the employer, singularly identified, only devices used and not used for other purposes. So don't take one of these hasps and locks and put them on your locker or to lock up your bike. And vice versa. Don't take your gym lock and put it on a machine. It's not gonna happen, it's not gonna work. Why? If you've seen those locks, they're pretty flimsy, right? I can just go up to a machine with a little lock you use for a bike and just what? Cut it. And put power back on. The stuff we want to use, we want to make it foolproof. Because again, we're going back to I don't want anybody to get hurt. So I want to be 100% sure that nobody's going to tamper with it. And there's some more materials. Durable, standardized, substantial, and identifiable. That's a big one, identifiable. You want people to know why that's there, why that lock is there, why that tag is there. And that's what the tag is for. It gives you a breakdown of why this machine has been locked out. And again, durable, because you don't want anybody breaking that thing. Do you think that one's good enough? Probably not. I would say no, from what I can see. Looks pretty flimsy to me. Types of devices, you gotta use the right tool for the right job, right? So here's some examples. We got the clamshells there for the valves. You got your hasp there for electrical. You got the one on the bottom right. I've never seen those, but they look pretty cool. Yeah, so instead of locking out the whole box, you just do one breaker, right? One at a time. Here's an example again. Does that lock look like it's gonna handle it? Will it corrode outside in the environment that it's in? I don't know. Here we go with the tags. So tags are generally to be utilized in tandem with locks. Generally, again. There's always gonna be that exception in documentation, whether or not you have to use it. I would say use both every time. Why not? Danger, do not operate tags to be installed on any vents or drains that are left open to atmosphere. And remember that tags only provide information and warning to alert workers. And it's important that tags do not lock out an entire source, right? Again, it goes back to, there's signs everywhere, there's stop signs, we have everything. All the signage in the world, but people still ignore them, right? They choose to ignore them. So we want to avoid that. And those tags only have enough information. It's what you put onto them. Like I said, the more the better. Put names, numbers, dates, times, all that stuff. Tags shall provide a warning to personnel not to energize the equipment, right? Pretty self-explanatory. They must be securely fastened to prevent accidental removal. Don't just stick it up there with a piece of gum that you had in your mouth, right? It's not gonna work, it's gonna fly off. Don't use, Scotch tape or whatever. I mean, it might work, but I doubt it. Tags are to be standard across the facility and different in design from other types of tags used for other purposes, right? And they have to be weatherproof again. It all depends on your environment. I'm not gonna put a piece of toilet paper with something that says warning on it outside, right? It's gonna fly away, it's just gonna turn to mush. Remember, locks and tags do not isolate energy sources, people do. Don't rely on other person's lock or tag, they may remove it without your knowledge. Ensure your own lock and tag is installed on the 6-hole hasp. Again, that's why we use a 6-hole hasp. You wanna, cover yourself. Locks and tags should only be removed by the person who installed them, that's very important. Don't lend your key out. You should be, if you put that lock on, you are the only one authorized to take it off. A lotto is a control measure that is required as part of the work permitting process. It should not be seen as superseding the need for a work permit. Notification of employees, we kind of covered this already. If you put a lock on a machine or de-energize it, whatever the case may be, let the people around you that you're working with know. Alert them. Don't just leave them hanging. So you shall be notified by the employer or authorized employee of the application and removal of lotto devices. Notification given before controls applied and after they are removed. So again, before you start working on a machine, let somebody know, and after you're done with it, let somebody know. All right, so lockout tag application shall be affixed to each energy isolating device by authorized employees, and we talked about, right, what's an authorized employee. Lockout devices shall be affixed in a manner that will hold the energy isolating device in a safe or off position. So it seems kind of dumb to put out there, but I've seen it happen. People leave it on and then tag it out and lock it out as safe. Well, that kind of defeated the purpose, it's still on. Locked it in the wrong position. Stored energy. Again, I talked about this earlier briefly. just because the machine is off, don't assume that there's no energy stored in there. There could be some. You always want to double check. And verification of isolation, again, prior to starting work or machines or equipment that have been locked out or tagged out, you want to verify that the machine's been isolated, right? You want to make sure that there's no other magical switch somewhere in the building that can turn that machine on. It should just be one switch. If there's more than one, you want to make sure they're all tagged out and locked out. And here we go from releasing of lockout and tag out. Before locked devices are removed and energy restored, the work area must be inspected to ensure that non-essential items have been removed and to ensure that machine or equipment components are operationally intact. Work areas shall be checked to ensure that all employees have been safely positioned or removed, and affected employees notified that locked devices are removed. So this is a good one. Does this look right? Anybody? Would you consider that locked out? Sure. Yes, no? I got somebody. Come on. Come on. Give me something. No, there you go. Ah, see? Hey, see, Jay? Save the day again, dude. Awesome. If you said no, you're correct. Why? I can still turn that valve, can't I? It's that simple. Again, you want to make sure you're using the right device, the right tool for the right job. And that's it for me, actually. I don't get a final slide. Look at that. Come on, there you go. Look at Jay. Thank you. That only hurt a little bit, right? It has to, otherwise you're not learning. All right, so that's it for me. I'll get out of your hair for now. Our next presentation is going to be from the Fire Prevention Office, and that will be, I was told, Fire Inspector Gormley. Okay, I was right for once.
Good afternoon, everybody. Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Michael Gormley. I'm Fire Inspector 113. I work at Navy Base Point, Longmore. They asked me to come over and speak to you today. I appreciate the opportunity. I'm a retired firefighter from Johnston, Rhode Island. Anybody from Rhode Island out here? Small state.
Never heard of it.
I'm going to try to avoid just reading the slides as much as possible and talk about some personal experience that I've had with fire safety. All right? The things we're going to talk about today is Christmas trees, Christmas lights, holiday cooking, and turkey fryers, and then some portable heaters. A lot of this is going to be pretty common sense. What I always think about whenever I'm teaching a fire safety class or anything along those lines is hopefully I can affect one person. You know what I mean? You never know who you affect. Hopefully something I talk about today will affect somebody. They can take it with them and put it to use in their home or at work. Again, really basic stuff here. Some lights are for outside, only use them for outside. Smaller lights don't necessarily require like a flash guard. Bigger lights require some type of cover, especially if they're against trees. Choose a sturdy tree stand. If you use an artificial tree, it should be labeled as Underwriters Laboratories certified. Everything you use in your home should be UL listed. Right, or some other certifying agency. Mostly it's going to be UL. That goes for your extension cords. Oh, I'm sorry, we're jumping way ahead. This is going to be. Not stand in front of this. When you buy a Christmas tree, make sure you don't buy a dried out Christmas tree. I don't know why anybody would do that anyway. But just make sure you don't do that. And when you bring a Christmas tree home, make sure you keep water under the tree and check it every day. You might not need to add water every day, but make sure you check it every day. I'm going to show you a video of 2 Christmas trees that get lit up. The dried out one is going to go so fast you're not going to believe it. Go ahead. Both of these trees are ignited in the same manner. And this is real time. If anybody knows anything about fire, fire normally burns up, heat goes up. This is so hot that it burns down. Again, that's real time, less than a minute. Teaching fire safety is sometimes a little challenging because it is a lot of common sense, and I know I'm talking to a lot of veterans, a lot of people with real life experience, but everything that we talk about here is because these things happen. You know what I mean? I know you've all seen us inspect your buildings. We always worried about extension cords and daisy chaining and surge protectors. Same things apply here. You can use extension cords, but they are to be used temporarily. If you use extension cords, use heavy gauge extension cords. Any frayed wires, broken wires, throw them away. Christmas tree lights are very inexpensive. Just throw them away. Don't try to jerry rig them or anything like that. Just throw that stuff away. Of course, always unplug lights before you leave your house and when you go to bed. Keep children away from your lights. I would recommend doing that right there. Whenever you wrap an extension cord, you're making a coil. A coil is a heater, basically. That's all an electrical heater is, for the most part, is a coil. Don't ever wrap an extension cord around anything. Never put anything on top of an extension cord. I've been to a fire on a Navy base at a construction site where they wrapped extension cords and then stacked hay on top of it. I can't think of a better way to start a fire. Holiday entertaining, they say unattended cooking is the #1 source of fire ignition in the United States. When cooking for holiday visitors, remember to keep an eye on the range or grill. It says keep 10 feet away from the house. Our instruction says 10 feet away from the building. We recently had a call at the clinic at NTC where they grilled right up to the building, and the smoke from the grill, because of course they burned it, the smoke from the grill went right into the building, so the fire department had to respond because the alarm did come in. So 10 feet from any building. Whenever you're cooking, you should have a Class K fire extinguisher. This says you can have a water hose or 5-gallon bucket. I mean, at a minimum, you should have a Class Kilo fire extinguisher, though. Remember, K for kitchen, that's what we teach in fire ward. Ensure the grill is completely out, charcoal is completely out. Never assume it's just going to go out. There's probably a lot of forest fires started because people thought it would go out. And obviously, never cook inside your garage. That's just silly to me. But we see it done. I don't know if, when I started here, Dave Salerno was my chief. Probably a lot of you know him. And he's a retired captain from National City, probably been to more fires than most people I ever know. They sent him from here to 32nd Street to write a hot work permit for somebody grilling. And he told me, I was driving there thinking, what a waste of time. I got to drive all the way to 32nd Street. Some Navy guys who probably know plenty about fire safety. I gotta give them permission to grill. This is ridiculous. He got there, they had the grill in the back of a pickup truck inside a warehouse. He said, oh, now I see why I gotta check on this stuff. I had a fire chief years ago, and he said, don't get mad when people do dumb things, because dumb things keep the fire department working. You know what I mean? It's job safety. I hate to say it. I went to a building here, I was stationed here a couple of years ago. I went to write a hot work permit, and at a nearby building, I saw a bunch of guys running away. I'm like, now this blue uniform, half the time people think we're the police. So everybody went running. I'm like, why are they running away? And then I look over, and there's a big vat of peanut oil on a picnic table under a canopy. I'm like, oh, now I see why they ran. One guy had the nerve to come out and say, hey, how you doing? Do we need a permit? You know you do. I said, listen, you can't do this here. You can't do this under this canopy. You can't do it on a picnic table. You're supposed to get a special event permit 3 days prior so we can tell you exactly what you need. You need a Class K extinguisher. And he said, okay, I'll move it. No, you're not going to move it. Leave that oil right there till it cools. I didn't want to be part of the guy burn himself with 5 gallons of peanut oil. Like I say, a lot of this seems like common sense, but it's because it happens all the time. I mean, you will see a Christmas tree fire on the news this year. You know what I mean? It's going to happen. This year, we will catch people in it. I don't want to catch people. That's not our job. You know what I mean? We just want them to do it safely. 3 days prior, come to the office at Building 317. We'll give you the special event permit. Tells you everything you need. The day you want to do the turkey fryer, call dispatch. I'll give you the number if you need it. 619-524-6999. Say, hey, I need a hot work permit. The fire inspector will come out and write your hot work permit, provided that you have everything. And if you're using a turkey fryer, you should know already that you need to use peanut oil. It should be on a flat surface, 10 feet from anything, nothing above you. Oil temperature should be no hotter than 350 degrees. Never leave the fryer unattended. I'm going to keep saying it's common sense, but I'm telling you, I see it every year. Last year at Building 340 on North Island, I had to write a hot work permit. They were doing 3 turkey fryers, had everything they needed. But the senior chief that was cooking the turkeys was wearing flip-flops and shorts and kept stepping over the gas lines. I had to call him over and say, see, I don't want to embarrass you. Like the last thing, I'm not trying to challenge you, but don't step over the gas line. For the love of God, get some pants and shoes on. I can't make it up. It happens every year. I don't want to keep saying it's common sense, but use good pot holders, right? Use good leather gloves. Make sure the turkey is completely thawed. Completely thawed. Everybody, take a look at putting a frozen turkey into a turkey fryer. It's practically an explosion. I have a video I'm going to show you in a minute. Again, one time me and my wife were doing Thanksgiving. Sorry, I could laugh. I think we went to thaw our turkey the day before. My mother just laughed at me. It takes days to thaw a frozen turkey. They recommend 24 hours for each 5 pounds of the turkey. All right? Keep a Class K fire extinguisher within 5 feet of the fryer. Never use water to extinguish a grease fire. Use well-insulated pot holders or oven mitts. This is totally real. That firefighter's having fun, just so you know. He's playing. With the proper gear on. In a garage with a frozen turkey. I tell you, I'm a retired firefighter from Johnston, Rhode Island. The most fires that I've ever been to is from candles. Candles are open flame. They get knocked down. It's a flame. They're not like cigarettes, not like something electrical that has to char for a while. A candle is burning. Honest to goodness, the most fires I've ever been to is from candles. My chief told me that you can have candles on the base. In the barracks, you can have candles. You just can't light them. Obviously, never leave burning candles unattended. Use candle holders that are sturdy. You know, if you smoke, you have people that smoke come to your house, make sure they don't leave their matches out. All right, make sure their cigarettes are extinguished properly, cigars extinguished properly. I know it sounds like common sense, but I'm telling you, there will be a fire. You'll be watching the news this year. Some fire started this way, one of these ways. You can't have portable heaters on bases. They're supposed to be approved by NAVFAC. NAVFAC has a form. We don't worry about it that much. I just don't want them plugged into surge protectors. They should be plugged directly into a wall. And the biggest thing that we look for is that they turn off when they tip. Right? I don't know if it's as much of an issue over here. MCRD, they have a lot of old stone buildings, cement buildings. They stay cold. Everybody has a portable heater under their desk at MCRD. If I could talk about one thing. I think that was the last slide. Anybody have any questions? This is not related to a slide. Listen, if you got to call 911 on the base and you call from your cell phone, you're going to get San Diego Police or maybe Coronado Police or California Highway Patrol. The first thing you got to do, and I've probably told some of you this already when I come out to write hot work permits. The first thing you have to do is tell them I'm on a base. Then they will transfer you. That 911 operator who is probably busy and annoyed by your call, or at least will act annoyed by your call, will transfer you to the Navy Regional Dispatch Center. They might not even say anything. They'll transfer you to the Navy Regional Dispatch Center. The Navy Regional Dispatch Center will pick up and say, 911, where is your emergency? That's the first thing they want. Not what's going on. Where is your emergency? Because if you got disconnected at that point, they can get you help, be police or fire. All right? So know where you are on the base. Know where, if you have students, contractors, anybody, make sure they know where they are on the base. The way dispatch works, sorry if you know this already, there's a call taker. That call taker creates an event and sends it to another dispatcher so they can dispatch help, all right? But they cannot create an event if they don't have a location. This happens every day in dispatch. It's very frustrating for the dispatchers. It's frustrating for the caller. I mean, I'm sure more frustrating for the caller. Have everybody know what building they're in and what their base number is called. You know, if you had OLFIB, make sure, I don't know if you have any facilities down there. OLFIB, 32nd Street. Know where you are on the base, what your building number is. If you can know Cross Street, that helps also. While I'm speaking of that, it's been my experience, people on bases, and I really don't know why, are afraid to call 911. Do not be afraid to call 911. And also, it's just 911. All right? Just do not be afraid to call 911. We did a drill at the clinic here, and the woman told us, we said, no, nobody called 911, that's part of the drill. They said, oh, we're not allowed to call 911. I mean, that's as ridiculous as anything I ever heard. My wife worked at the CDC at Miramar. There was a child choking. I tell you, I'm a retired firefighter. My wife knows the difference between choking and, you know, something stuck in your throat. There's a difference between really choking. She told her coworker, call 911. The coworker said, I have to ask the boss. My wife, I'm sure, yelled at her like I know she can do. But they never called 911. My wife did the Heimlich maneuver, and the object was dislodged from the toddler's throat. And to be honest, like, I'm disgusted by it. Firefighters can go back. Police can go back. You know what I mean? hesitate to call 911. I'm going to tell you another story. It was at Navy Base Point Loma. I got a call from another inspector who was on leave. She lives in Alpine. It was Deanna Stone. I don't know if some of you know her, I'm sure. She said, hey, can you go over to such and such building? They said they got an electrical smell. I'm like, okay, I'll go right now. They had electrical smell. The white ballast was burning in the overhead. They called their facility manager. The facility manager called Deanna, who was in Alpine. She called me. I went over there and I said, call 911 right now. Because something was burning in the ceiling. But they were just so afraid to call 911. I really don't know what it is. If it's people on base are afraid to get in trouble, or the firefighters have such bad attitudes they give you a hard time when they come. Mike Gormley, I'm Mike Gormley, Prevention 113. If you think you're going to call 911, please call 911. That's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, oh, look at that. So up next, we're going to have our several awareness challenge presented by Ms. Tamika Clay Jefferson. Jefferson? Yeah. Let's mess that one up. It's been a long day.
Good afternoon, guys. I'm Ms. Clay Jefferson. I work in the cybersecurity office. I am going to present you your annual Cyber Awareness Challenge for 2020. So bear with me. This gave me 105 slides to teach you guys today. I'm playing. Okay, first thing first, malicious code. So malicious code can do damage by corrupting files, erasing your hard drives, and allowing hackers access to your various files and whatnot. We have the usual suspects of malicious code to include virus, Trojan horses, worms, macros, and scripts. All right, how do you protect against malicious code? To protect against viruses and downloading malicious code, scan your external files, scan your drives, don't email infected files to someone. If you do not know who sent you the file, delete it. Email protection. View email in plain text and do not view email in the preview pane. Don't access websites, buttons, graphics, or other things that may pop up in your email, especially if you don't know who they've come from. A case study that happened just April of this year at Fort Bragg, they did a simulated cyber attack against their electrical grid. It shut down power to the whole base. That's just kind of alarming and letting you know that we're always under attack. People didn't know what to do. It lasted for over 12 hours. Your CAT card or your PIV card, just know that that's a controlled item. It's supposed to be on your person at all times. If you happen to use it in your computer and you walk away, make sure that you are within arm's reach, because once you get out of arm's reach, you are definitely losing positive control of your card. So keep that in mind. Also, make sure you take your card with you whenever you leave your space. Never surrender your card to someone who is other than the gate providers and whatnot. And make sure that you don't write your PIN down. Sometimes people write their PINs down, pop them up under their keyboard, and do different things like that. Also, remember, you're not allowed to have people photocopy your CAT card unless you're like maybe at medical or whatnot. But for the most part, that's a big no-no. Some of you guys also have alternate tokens. Those tokens are used for various other functions. Treat them just like your CAT card. Protect them, protect the pins that you have with them. Make sure that you don't stick them into any machine that it is not approved for. Telework. Make sure you have a telework agreement on file. We have a lot of laptops here on our installation. People take those computers home. Make sure you have a telework agreement on file, like I said. Make sure you're using a VPN when you connect. When you're connecting, when you're on travel or whatnot, make sure you go through that VPN. Sometimes you may go to your hotel room and you try to connect and it takes you to a different splash page. Make sure you're not circumventing the actual security safeguards that are in place for connecting. Another little case study that was done is in 2018, they looked at our passwords and you've seen that people were able to get the username and password for a weapon system, and they were able to take control of that weapon system. So once again, that just shows you how grave it can be if you lose positive control of a password. Removable media. We have a lot of removable media on this base, or at our installation, I should say. But just so you know, removable media contains, or other things such as iPods and music players. We have rules against some of those things, so make sure you're adhering to them, and if you don't know, go ahead and give our office a call. Like always, follow the guidelines for PEDS. Never plug anything that is unauthorized into government-furnished equipment. So those little flash drives that some of you may have and use, they're not authorized here for use. If you have a hard drive, make sure it's registered through our SharePoint page. And ensuring to protect the data on those PEDS. If you use your government cell phone to conduct business, make sure you're adhering to whatever the classification is of that business that you're conducting. Also, make sure that if you happen to use your personal device sometimes to communicate with some of your employees or your boss or whatnot, you are not putting out information that is of sensitive nature on your cell phone. When you travel with these computers, laptops, mobile devices, and whatnot, make sure, like I said, you use caution, VPN in, and be cognizant of who's around and the things that you're talking about and who can view your screen. Try not to access internet cafes and different things like that because things can happen. When you're traveling overseas with those devices, make sure you stop by security first. Get approval. You can't just pick up, leave, go on travel to Europe or some other foreign place with your laptop. In most instances, you really don't need to take your laptop or that device with you. But if there is some reason on why you have to, make sure someone is known about it in the security office and that you got clearance. Like I said before, when you're using those things in public, make sure that you are cognizant of who's around. Like I told the earlier crowd, keep your head on a swivel. Make sure you're looking at who's sitting there. Sometimes people are just looking for someone to show up with that computer with that unclassed sticker, and they're listening in on your conversations and seeing what you're doing on your screen. A case study that was done in 2018 with our fitness trackers. It used GPS to track military bases and whatnot that shouldn't have been really known to the public. This entity put all that information on their website, and people were privy to military bases and the whole layout of the base due to different heat trackers. Social networking. A lot of us use social media. Make sure you are, use brevity when you're on social media. Just don't talk about everything. A lot of us put, you know, who we are, what we're affiliated with, our religion, where we work. Be mindful of that, because people can take that information and try to socially engineer you. Make sure you don't speak negatively about your organization. Sometimes things happen, and yeah, they're bad. We may laugh and joke about it at work, but when you start putting that information out there online, it can draw the pieces together, and it kind of looks bad about the organization. Looks bad on the organization, excuse me. If you ever feel as though that someone is trying to rouse you for information or socially engineer you, let your security POC know, or either let our office know, and we will try to give you some ideas and some things to do in order to make sure that we are following up on that. Remember, yeah, you work here, but when you're out, you're still a representative of the United States and also of your command. Keep in mind that online misconduct is inconsistent with DoD values. Individuals who participate in condone misconduct, whether online or offline, may be subject to criminal and disciplinary actions. So don't harass, bully, hate, stalk, discriminate, or use retaliation with people when online. Ethical use of GFE, this is a big one for us because a lot of people have GFE in their areas and they're utilizing it to get their job done, but sometimes we do things that we're not by looking and downloading pornography or different things that we're not supposed to look at, using the internet to gamble, conduct private business or money-making ventures. Those are a big no-no. Make sure you don't do it. There's different things in place that can catch you if you get caught. The first time usually is a warning depending upon what the issue is. If it continues, the second time is a 30-day lockout, which prohibits productivity in work. How do you make sure that you use your GFE ethically? Like I said, don't download illegal or copyrighted material. And this goes into those of you who have those developer seats or those SMT seats, making sure that anything that you put on those seats are DATMS approved, and that's NMCI DATMS approved. If you don't know what that is, get with us and we will let you know, because you have to make sure that you are not using copyrighted material and whatnot. Don't play games. I've not seen it ever really be allowed on your government computer. Use of your government email. Do not send chain letters, offensive letters, jokes, mass emails, unnecessary pictures, or even inspirational stories. All right? Use of your government email. To email appropriately, avoid using reply all. A lot of times you need to pay attention to who you're speaking with. Sometimes someone may send an email to a lot of people. but the reply only needs to go to 1 or 2 people. So avoid using the reply all feature, and follow the organization's policy on webmail. A lot of times people sign into OWA, but you really don't understand that OWA, if you don't have the paperwork and the training on file, you're not really supposed to use it. Once again, we talk about social engineering. As of late, within the last month, a lot of us have received phone calls from a foreign-speaking person on the other end. If you get those phone calls, don't hesitate to let security know, let our office know, even if they come via email. Let us know. One came in about Navy Federal, and everything looked legit except for the fact that the little string in the email was something different. So we will give you the procedures on how to handle that if that happens to you. Once again, the same thing when you're online or on the phone or emails. People may try to phish, and some of those emails are phishing, especially during this time of year. People get a lot of emails in, and they're asking you different things, and you're like, oh man, someone stole my information. Let me provide them all my info. Most of your banks and those different organizations won't contact you like that. So protect yourself against phishing. Do not access sites by selecting links or emails or pop-ups. Once again, that's a big no-no. Avoid sites with expired certificates. Like I said, if you have any issues, concerns, or have been contacted, contact your security office or myself or my office. When it comes to physical security, some of our areas you have to swipe your badge and get in, or there are sign-in sheets or different things like that. Make sure you're adhering to the rules for that. There's no piggybacking or following someone in, and making sure you're putting your name on those lists when you sign in and sign out. Those are just good practices. Like I said, challenge people who don't have the proper tags. We all were issued our little blue ID cards. You should be wearing those around the installation. And like I said, keeping your head on a swivel, just having a situational awareness. Avoid being a target of adversaries and remain aware of your surroundings, right? When you leave the base, when you go out to lunch or whatever, take your badge off, right? Everyone doesn't need to know where you work. It prevents people from asking you unnecessary questions. One of the big things that always comes up is insider threat. Just pay attention to your coworkers. Insiders can cause some of the most grave damage because they have a lot of our close secrets. So keep that in mind. It says, demonstrated behaviors of security concerns 80% of the time, experienced a life crisis 25% of the time, and volunteered 75% of the time. Although the vast majority of people who are loyal and patriotic, the insider threat is real and we must be vigilant in our effort to thwart it. So some of the signs that they say that you should look out for is someone who may have difficult life circumstances, to include death, divorce, alcohol dependence, untreated mental health issues, and financial difficulties. Pay attention to that. It doesn't happen for all of us, but if you start to notice a pattern in someone who is normally very happy and ecstatic, and they start to show a decline, pay attention and report that. And that just tells you to report it to your supervisor, report it to security, and they will take the action needed. Some of our spaces are open secret storage, and even making sure that you pay attention to unclassified information. Just because it's unclassified does not mean that you have the ability to just share it with everyone. So keep that in mind. When you are dealing with PHI or PII, you have these cover sheets. When any of that information is on your desk, you are able to use it, but the moment that you are done with it, you need to place a cover sheet on that information. When you're done for the day, make sure you lock that sensitive information up in your drawers or the safe or cabinets that you have. It should not be left out at the end of a working day. And like I said, making sure you're protecting that information in accordance with the DFARS, CUI, and other CT handling requirements. Like I said, PII includes social security numbers, date, place of birth, mother's maiden name, biometric records, PHI, protected health information, and passport number. So like I said, lock all that information up at the end of the day, use those cover sheets. Classified data, once again, if you are privy to classified data, make sure you understand how to properly handle it. If you don't know how to properly handle it, you need to get with security so you can make sure you don't cause any incidents. If you happen to cause a spillage of any kind, make sure you report it immediately. Once you report it, we will make sure we take the steps that we need to report it and send it out of house. Things to do to prevent inadvertent spillage is to always check and make sure you are using the correct network and the level of data. Label all files, removable media, with the subject matters, headers, and appropriate classification markings. Right? When you use those, so the removable media and control spaces, like I said, the biggest thing is to actually know how to use it. If you don't know how to use it, stop, take a training time out, get the information that you need, and then you'll be able to make sure that you keep yourself safe from having an incident, right? Because there's a lot of risk with removable media. You can introduce malicious code into your systems, compromise your systems, cause a spillage. Some of the biggest things are loss of mission and loss of life. Like I said, if you have an incident, please report it. We will take action and do what we need to do to make sure that we mitigate the incident. And you have now been trained on your annual Cyber Awareness Challenge. You are done. If you have any questions, let me know. I'm in building 334, the third floor, door 11. One thing I do want to put out to you guys is that right now my office is conducting a SAR-N audit. So a lot of you are receiving emails. Some of them have been kind of email threats to say this is your last chance before we lock your account out. Make sure you get that information back to us so we can put it into TWIMS. That way you can pull your SAR form if ever needed. I appreciate you. Thank you for taking the time to listen. You guys have a wonderful day.
Thank you, Tamika. You guys, yeah, where's everybody going? Okay. No, we're not done yet. You got one more to go. Come on. I promise it'll be quick. I promise. You like this guy. You like this guy. So you guys might recognize this guy. I mean, you might not. He's, usually wearing a suit. But we got Vince. Mr. Vince Martinez is going to give you asbestos training, and I promise he's going to get you through it.
Thank you, Esteban. Hey, give Esteban a pretty big hand. He's done a really good job today. He's done a really good job for us. So good afternoon, everybody. Thanks for coming and joining in the training today. I just want to set this up. This was going to be short and sweet, but I just want to give you a little scenario, okay? You come to work. Your workspace, there's a lot of white powdery substance on your, okay, don't go there. But you don't know what it is, but you also don't want to touch it, and you want to get it tested, okay? So right away what you have to do is notify your supervisor. They'll in turn, they'll call the safety office, and then we'll also get industrial hygienists to send somebody out there to do what they call bulk wipe sampling. And they'll take samples of the entire area, they'll cordon it off, they'll rope it off, because we don't know what it is, okay? And we have to send those samples to the industrial hygienists have to send those out to the lab, and they get tested. We put a rush on it, and then the samples come back either positive or negative for asbestos, okay? And what we don't want you to do is get exposed to that. And we do have a program in place, so if you ever have any questions, by all means, we're going to give you some areas of where you can contact us, but definitely the safety office. But you want to report it to your supervisor immediately if you suspect anything in that case. So first of all, what is asbestos? Okay, if you didn't know, you're gonna find out that actually you can't even see it with the naked eye. You need to have a microscope to be able to see it. And the dangerous thing is you can't see when you're inhaling it. That's when it enters your respiratory and affects your respiratory tract, and that it's going to talk about how long it takes for symptoms to actually show up, and we'll go there. We'll talk about and identify who our asbestos manager is. It's an individual that if you suspect something like that, you can actually call him. He has a binder that annotates all of the areas aboard the facility here that have been abated of asbestos, and can get you rest assured that the area is safe. If not, he can also identify that it hasn't been abated. So then we do have on the facility here, we do have what we call ABIs, which are asbestos inspectors or certified folks. We have a few in the safety office, and we assist with all of that when you call in a concern for that. So if you'll just indulge me for a moment, I'm going to share a video with you, and it's going to answer all your questions. And please be patient with this because we're streaming this right now, so it's we'll see what we land up with.
Sometimes in construction, we have to work with materials that contain asbestos or in environments where it's present. Because there's a possibility of encountering asbestos or presumed asbestos-containing materials, workers need information to help protect them from becoming exposed. Here we'll cover the following: what is asbestos, uses for asbestos, hazard recognition and control, health hazards, finding asbestos at work, and they're also long, thin, and flexible, so they can be woven into cloth. For many years, asbestos was considered a miracle mineral. It's fireproof and resistant to acid and corrosion, as well as being a good electrical insulator. Asbestos was used in roofing and flooring products, fireproofing materials, reinforcing cement, pipes, friction products such as automobile brake and clutch linings, electrical insulation, thermal and acoustical insulation. This is just a partial list of the products that asbestos may be found in. Finding asbestos. Before the 1970s, asbestos was used in schools, homes, factories, and public buildings. It was sprayed on ceilings where it often looked like white popcorn. It was used in and on walls to help deaden sound. Asbestos was used as wrapping for steam and water pipes, duct systems, and boilers. It was used to fireproof beams in steel buildings. These beams can still be found in false ceilings. Hazard recognition. Currently, not all types of building materials have been assessed for the presence of asbestos. Suspected materials must be presumed as asbestos-containing materials, or PACM, unless proven otherwise. Asbestos is difficult to find, identify, and safely handle. Don't attempt to remove it yourself. If you encounter PACM, you must immediately leave the area and notify your supervisor. They'll take the necessary steps to correct the problem. Although the use of asbestos in the United States was essentially halted in the late 1970s, with just a few exceptions, it has continued to have a real impact on the country. The lives of many individuals have been adversely affected by previous asbestos exposures, and asbestos can still be found, particularly in old homes, factories, and commercial buildings. This continued presence of asbestos means that it's likely more individuals will be impacted in the years to come. Hazard control. Today, a great deal is known about the health hazards that result from overexposure to asbestos. It's very important for your health to work safely with or around asbestos. Most asbestos abatement professionals agree that unless asbestos is friable, that is, easily broken or damaged, it's safer to leave it in place. Friable asbestos is the most hazardous. Asbestos which can easily crumble or be pulverized to dust by simple hand pressure is friable. Sanding, scraping, and cutting are other procedures that cause asbestos to be friable. These actions release the harmful fibers. Breathing hazards. Asbestos has been declared a known human carcinogen, having been commonly associated with asbestos cancer. The respiratory tract is the primary bodily system affected by asbestos exposure. Asbestos fibers are so tiny you need a microscope to see them. You can easily breathe them in without knowing it, whether they're in the air or on your clothes. Health hazards. Asbestos can cause serious lung and breathing diseases. The primary diseases associated with asbestos exposure are asbestosis, lung cancer, and mesothelioma. These diseases can take as long as 15 to 35 years to show up. Smokers who are exposed to asbestos are as much as 90 times more likely to get certain lung diseases than non-smokers. Safe procedures. Only trained and protected personnel are allowed to work with asbestos materials. All other personnel should report any suspected asbestos problem and shouldn't disturb it. Some people are specially trained to work with asbestos. If you aren't, don't sand, scrape, cut, remove, or drill into walls, ceilings, or floors, or other material where asbestos may be present. If you ever have to work with asbestos, your goal is to prevent breathing it in. There are a number of safe procedures that can help. Specially trained personnel only wet asbestos before working on it, if it's safe to do so. Some jobs require the use of a high-efficiency particulate air or HEPA-filtered vacuum cleaner. Sealed glove bags are also used. Working safely with asbestos depends on both you and your supervisor. Only work with asbestos or PACM if you have received special training to do so. Review. Asbestos is a naturally occurring silica-based mineral that's refined into tiny, strong fibers. It was used in heat and electrical insulation, automobile brake and clutch linings. Asbestos was used extensively in the pre-70s and may be found in our homes and industrial facilities. We talked about safe procedures of handling asbestos, presumed asbestos or PACM, and health hazards of asbestos.
Okay, so our FRC Southwest ABM, our asbestos manager, his name is Michael Howell, and he's located in Building 90 in the facilities area. And once again, like I said, we do have some other asbestos inspectors in the safety office and throughout the plant. So if you have any questions? All right, great. Have a great Autobahn weekend.
Thank you very much. This has been our safety stand-up for pre-holidays. You received safety training in the home, you received safety training in the workplace, and you received safety training on the road. Please be mindful on the road and have a safe holiday. Thank you very much.